bring up George Lee Jr. up here. This is Kalala. Come on up.
Thank you very much. I want to take this time to thank Cola, Amanda, as well as the Umpqua Advocacy Group. My name is George Lee Jr. I'm a member of the Yakama Nation. And as was mentioned, I did 17 years of military service, 6 years in the Air Force, and then an additional 11 years in the Army. I deployed 7 times for this country, put my life on the line multiple times. I've been in multiple firefights with Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Hezbollah. I've been blown up several times as well by those same insurgents. And so when it comes to standing up and fighting for what I believe in, this is one of those things that takes the forefront of my fight. And so I am very happy and pleased to be here, be able to share with you just a little bit about who I am, my story, and then the story that I wish to leave behind as I have children that are growing up, as will be soon taking the reins of the work that I and my wife lay down for their benefit. So let me start off by first introducing my wife and my kids. My wife, Bridget Nicole Lee. We've been married for 12 years. We got married just after I got back from Afghanistan the second time. My wife, Bridget, and then our 2 daughters, Liliana and Layla. They have made their way here with me to be a witness to this work that we are able to not only witness but also advocate for the benefit of our Indigenous women and girls. My mother, Sandra Lee Samiskin, she was shot and killed on the streets of Seattle back in 2003. During this time, I was stationed in the United Kingdom, my very first duty station in the military. And while it was my very first duty station away from home, it was a very difficult thing to be able to have to digest on my own the loss of my mother. There are several people that I stand with now, advocate with, as they have lost their mother as well in the same horrific fashion, an unsolved murder. And so as we do our best to advocate for this thing that we understand has taken so much away from both you and I, the only thing that was able to go through my mind at that time was the sheer loneliness. I was stationed in England, and during that time, my mother, when she was shot and killed, my grandmother gave me a call. And the way we started out this entire thing, we started out with the wash-up songs that was brought out by Cola's husband and son. And in the wash-up faith, the way that we practice, we understand that as soon as a heart and a body stop working in this world, that we have a certain amount of time to put that heart and body away and return it back to Mother Earth. And so, when my mother was shot and killed, to respect that timeline and to understand and respect our way of life and the teachings that have been passed down to you and I, my mother was put away before I could come back home from England. So I was not able to see my mother. I was not able to say my goodbyes to her as a lot of other people are allowed to. When I came back home from England, my mother was already put away. And that was a tough thing to digest. As soon as I started talking to my uncle about my mother and the death that she had, he was doing his own little investigations and was told that my mother was shot and killed out of retaliation because she owed someone $300. And to understand that my mother's life was taken from me, from her, from my daughters, for the cost of $300 was something that struck and hit even deeper. To understand that we are actually putting a number on someone's life. This was different for me when I was in Afghanistan. I operated as a forward observer. And for my position, the Taliban had a bounty on my head as a forward observer. That was a measly $50,000 that the Taliban would absolutely pay for someone like me. But my mother lost her life for $300. To quantify, now understand that is how you're looked at, your children are looked at, and those that come beyond your children are looked at in that same manner. You are quantified by a number. And that is a scary thing to think about. As we understand in today's political realm, this man that we call our commander-in-chief, he signed an order making the cartel a terrorist organization. And as he signed that order making cartel a terrorist organization, he then put down military forces down at the Mexico border. He started creating a sense of uneasement with, as you call, ICE patrols, ICE agents, who then began to manipulate and cause city, municipalities, and jurisdictions to follow in that same suit. We as indigenous, as I have just explained, have a number on us already. And as I was talking with my wife about it, and even though we have all of these things, the border secure, we have the police and ICE doing what they do, we still have cartel that are falling short on their monetary requirements that they are required to make every single month. And so that creates this even more sense of uneasement amongst indigenous communities because we become targeted that much more. And so it was one of those things that I began understanding as I fight for this United States military, as I lay down my life for this country, and as I put forth the effort that I know that I can put forth. At the same time, we still have the fight with our government, as it's been being fought since, well, for my people, since 1855, as when we first stood up against missing and murder. In 1855, after our treaty was signed with the U.S. government, and we were told that you have 2 years before the ratification of this treaty, before any white man will set foot on your land, you have 2 years to get everything in order. Once that 2 years is done, we will then begin to allow settlers into your land. Before that ratification was done, there was gold discovered. miners started making their way across the land, disregarding completely the ratification requirements that our government puts. And so our land started getting encroached by miners. And these miners at the same time would kidnap, rape, and murder indigenous women and girls. That is where missing and murdered started for the Yakima back in 1855. That is how long we have been fighting this cause, as you see every single picture that is put down on that screen. Since 1855, our individualism has been quantified by the U.S. government in a manner that is displeasing and just does everything in its way to justify us off the land. And so because of that mentality that I began to understand in my military service, when I came back home, became the focus of digging down deep, digging into the language, understanding our words, our Itchishkin, our Sahaptin ways, digging deeper, find out more and more, understand everything that you can about the sweat house ways, because we understand tribe, the tribe, the tribe, the tribe, all practice the sweat house. And even as we move forward with the Washat understanding, as this whole thing was started out in the Washat song, you see everybody moving your hand for the purpose of that Washat ceremony. Washat comes all the way down here as a way of life, a religion that comes way down here to Grand Round, goes all the way up to Omak and the Canadian border, goes all the way over to the Idaho border as well. Throughout that entire portion, the people will practice Washat. And so when I returned back home, that too became a motivating factor in understanding how we can maintain our identity. When I first started doing these things, I ran into what we call roadblocks or speed bumps, where people will witness the work that you do. And for whatever reason, these people, they will say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. And they'll make you feel bad about the work that you're trying to put in, trying to make yourself feel better about yourself. I realize that the more that people bash or try to humiliate, if you will, those that are trying to stand into this identity, are only perpetuating that, scaring the people away from the identity that they have within themselves. My name is Powatla. My mother, her name is Sandra Lee Samiskin. She is the one that is murdered. Her mother is Elaine Frank. Elaine Frank comes from Klickitat River. When the treaty was signed, the Klickitat, they were disbanded. Half of the tribe went to Yakima, and the other half came down here to Grand Round. So I might have family down here that I don't know about when it comes to my grandmother's side. My grandfather's side, my mother's father, he is Walla Walla. He comes from the Umatilla Reservation, but he is enrolled Walla Walla. He comes from the Pio Pio Mox Mox family. And then on my father's side, my father is George Lee Sr. His mother, she comes from Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And so, as we witnessed the canoe songs come out, made me think about my grandmother and that part of my lineage that I carry within myself. My father's father comes from White Swan. He too was the leader of Toppenish Creek Longhouse. And so, as I move forward in my identity, no different than each and every one of you, as you sit there and you think about your grandparents, where they came from. As I sit here and I think about my grandparents and where I come from, I understand that I have all of these different blood flowing through my veins. And each one has its own teachings. My click attack, for instance, on my grandmother's side, will have its own beliefs and teachings. My grandmother's side, on my mom's side, the Canadian side, will have its own teachings as well. If I start learning any of these things at my age, and if I get something wrong, is that permission to ridicule me? We find often that people are ridiculed for messing something up, getting something wrong. And so, as I began reading these slides and seeing the words that are put on there, and understand how we protect our future so that this fear does not motivate or drive us. It is my hope that as we finish up our evening here, that we find it within ourselves to protect that identity that you are still trying to understand for yourself. Think about your grandmother on your mom's side. Think about your grandmother on your father's side. Think about the many teachings that they probably wished they could have handed down to you, but maybe their time came short. Our grandfathers as well on our mom's and dad's side too have these teachings that they wish they could teach us. For the sake of carrying our way of life forward, it is nothing but that. And so, my prayer as we move forward with this work that we do is that each and every one of us stand up in that strength to protect identity, whether you agree with it or not. Because that identity is going to have enough trouble already. As we understand the manner that this government is going, we really need to start pulling ourselves together. And so, to understand what UNCWA stands for and how they wish to bring people together, unite, I'm very happy that this work is being done for each and every one of us. I want to thank Cola and I want to thank Amanda again for giving me this time, because sometimes we feel muted when it comes to talking about our loved ones. Sometimes we don't know what to say. Sometimes we feel like we have a lot to say, and then we just stumble on our words. But understand that even if you stumble on your words, there's still that courage to get back up and try again. And if you stumble again, that's okay. You keep getting up, you keep trying again. That is what I believe my mother would have told me. When I think about missing and murdered, I think about the messages that my mother would have given me. I think about the messages that my cousin would have given me. And it's only those messages that can hopefully perpetuate us forward in a positive way. Should we try to meet those messages halfway, we must be willing to put in the work. And so, as I come here and I voice just a little bit, because the missing and murdered is a very, very, very huge thing, that this is just a mere small part. And I understand that my mom's part is very small when it comes to missing and murdered. But I will sit here and I will scream at the top of my lungs as often as I can, as loud as I can, because I understand that there are many families out there that are standing up and screaming as loud as they can too, no less. So until all of our missing and murdered come back home, I will sit here and I will scream as loud as I can for them to come home. But I'm happy to be here. Thank you, each and every one of you, for taking your time out of your busy schedules. And I hope you all have a very lovely evening. Au Kalari Kush.